I practiced 3 times in front of the mirror that morning. "Mr. Reed, I appreciate the opportunity, but I'm resigning." Simple words, professional tone, clean break. But as I walked from the human resources floor toward the CEO's office, I had no idea that today would become the strangest day of my life. Samuel Reed, the company's CEO, only 32 years old, yet already a legend in the business world. Silent, strict, and always hiding behind an invisible wall. For 2 years I'd been his executive assistant, and in all that time I'd never seen him smile. Not once. Today was supposed to be simple: hand over the letter, shake hands, and walk away to my new job across town. The elevator doors opened on the executive floor, and I stepped out with the white envelope tucked inside my leather portfolio. My heart hammered against my ribs, but I kept my expression neutral. This was business. Nothing personal, just a career move that made sense on paper. But before I could reach his office, the receptionist flagged me down. Her face looked worried, almost frantic. "Philip, Mr. Reed called with an emergency. He's working from home today. Something came up. He needs you to go there immediately." My stomach dropped. "Home? But I'm sending you the address right now. Please hurry." He said it was urgent. In 2 years of working closely with Samuel Reed, he'd never once invited me to his personal residence. We kept everything strictly professional, confined to office walls and business hours. The request felt strange, almost intrusive, but an assistant's job is to follow instructions without question. I slipped the resignation letter back into my bag and headed down to the parking garage. The address led me to an upscale neighborhood I'd only driven through before, never imagining I'd actually enter one of these buildings. His penthouse occupied the top floor of a sleek glass tower overlooking the city. When I reached his door, I could hear noise from inside. Shouting, crying. Something was very wrong. I hesitated, my finger hovering over the doorbell. But before I could press it, the door swung open violently. Samuel stood there, and I barely recognized him. This wasn't the composed CEO who commanded boardrooms with a single glance. His shirt hung open, buttons undone and askew. His normally perfect hair stuck up in different directions, and his eyes, those cold, calculating eyes I'd grown accustomed to now, showed something I'd never witnessed before. Panic. Raw, unfiltered panic. "Philip, thank God you're here." He grabbed my arm and practically dragged me inside. "I need your help. Right now." I stepped into chaos. The pristine living room I'd imagined, all modern furniture and expensive art, was littered with toys. Colorful blocks scattered across the marble floor. A stuffed elephant lay abandoned near the fireplace. The smell of burnt food wafted from the kitchen, and I could see blackened pancakes still smoking on the stove. But what stopped me cold was the small figure on the sofa. A little boy, maybe 5 years old, sat curled into himself with his face buried in his knees. His small shoulders shook with silent sobs. "Who is that?" I asked, though something in my gut already knew the answer would change everything. Samuel ran both hands through his disheveled hair, a gesture of complete helplessness I'd never seen from him. "That's Leon. He's my son." My eyes widened. "Your son? It's complicated. His mother showed up here this morning without warning. Just dropped him off and said she couldn't do this anymore. She left for another country, had a plane ticket already booked. No phone call beforehand. No discussion. She just left him here and disappeared." Samuel's voice cracked on the last word, and I saw his hands trembling slightly as he gestured toward the crying child. "Leon hasn't stopped crying since she left. He won't eat anything I try to make. Won't talk to me. Won't even look at me. I've tried everything I could think of. I canceled 3 major meetings. I attempted to make breakfast and nearly set off the fire alarm. I don't—" He paused, swallowing hard. "I don't know what to do." I stood there speechless, trying to process this impossible situation. This was the man who negotiated million-dollar mergers without breaking a sweat, who could silence a room full of executives with a single word, who never showed weakness or uncertainty. Yet here he stood, completely lost when faced with his own child. "Why did you call me?" I finally managed to ask. Samuel looked directly at me, and for the first time in 2 years I saw something real beneath his professional mask. Vulnerability, desperation, fear. "Because you're the only person I trust." The only one who won't judge this mess or spread it around the office. Please, Philip. Just for today. Help me figure out what to do. I glanced at my bag where my resignation letter waited, carefully typed and signed. This was the perfect moment to hand it over and walk away. His personal crisis wasn't my responsibility. I had my own life to think about, my own future to build. But then the little boy on the sofa lifted his face. His eyes were red and swollen from crying, his cheeks wet with tears. When our gazes met, something in his expression broke through every logical argument in my head. Are you leaving too? Leon whispered, his voice so small and broken it physically hurt to hear. Leon? He's just Samuel started to explain. I'm not leaving. The words came out of my mouth before my brain could stop them. I'm staying right here. Samuel's breath caught. He stared at me like I'd just performed a miracle. You will? You'll help? I set my bag down by the door, the resignation letter forgotten inside. Just for today, I said, knowing even as I spoke that I was lying to myself. Because looking at that terrified little boy and his desperate father, I understood that walking away now was impossible. Something had shifted in the span of minutes. The careful boundaries I'd maintained, the professional distance I'd cultivated, all of it crumbled in the face of a child's tears. I moved toward the sofa slowly, crouching down to Leon's eye level. He watched me warily, like a wounded animal unsure whether to trust. Hey there, Leon. My name is Philip. I'm here to help, okay? Everything's going to be all right. He didn't respond, but he didn't pull away either. That small non-rejection felt like progress. Behind me, I heard Samuel exhale shakily and I realized he'd been holding his breath. I glanced back at him and saw gratitude mixed with something else in his expression. Hope perhaps, or relief that he wasn't facing this alone anymore. I had come here to quit my job and start fresh somewhere else. Instead, I just agreed to stay and help a man I barely knew raise a child I just met. The irony wasn't lost on me, but as I turned back to Leon and saw a flicker of trust beginning to form in his tearful eyes, I knew there was no other choice I could have made. Not really. Some moments demand more from us than logic or career plans. Some moments require us to simply be human. He hasn't eaten anything since this morning. Samuel stood in the kitchen doorway, his voice hollow with worry. Leon remained on the sofa where I'd found him, still curled into a defensive ball. The poor kid looked exhausted from crying, but his body stayed tense, ready to protect itself from more pain. I approached him carefully, moving with the kind of gentle slowness you'd use around a frightened animal. When I reached the sofa, I lowered myself to sit on the floor beside it, putting myself at his level rather than towering above him. Leon, I know today has been really scary. Your stomach must be pretty empty by now, right? Nothing. Not even a glance in my direction. I tried a different approach. What if I made you something special? Something that might make you feel a little better? Still silence. But I noticed his crying had quieted. He was listening, even if he wasn't ready to respond. I stood and walked over to Samuel, keeping my voice low. What kinds of food does he usually like? Samuel's face fell and the admission clearly cost him. I honestly don't know. I only found out he existed 6 months ago. His mother kept him hidden during our entire relationship. There's been a custody battle in court. I was supposed to get visitation rights next month. I had time to prepare, to learn about him gradually, but she just abandoned him here without any warning or information. The pain in his voice cut deep. This wasn't just about being unprepared. This was about being robbed of the chance to know his own child, and now facing the terrifying responsibility of instant fatherhood with zero foundation. All right, let me see what I can work with. I explored his kitchen, which was clearly designed for someone who rarely cooked. But I found enough basics to work with: bread, cheese, butter, some condiments. Within 10 minutes, I had a perfectly grilled cheese sandwich, golden and crispy, cut into triangles with a small dollop of ketchup on the side of the plate. I brought it to Leon and sat cross-legged on the floor near him, setting the plate where he could see it. This is a magic sandwich, I said conversationally as if we were old friends. But it only works for brave people. And I have a feeling you're pretty brave. Leon lifted his head slightly, peeking at me with red-rimmed eyes full of suspicion. Are you brave enough to try it? I asked gently. A long pause stretched between us. Then so subtle I almost missed it, he gave the smallest nod. I thought so. He uncurled slowly, reaching out with hesitant fingers to pick up one triangle. He took a tiny bite, then another. His chewing gradually became less cautious. Before I knew it, he'd finished the entire sandwich. From the doorway, Samuel watched with an expression of wonder, as if I'd just performed actual magic rather than simply making a grilled cheese. The day passed in small victories. Leon started responding to questions with nods or head shakes. He allowed me to show him the guest room that would temporarily be his. He even managed a brief tour of the apartment without breaking down again. By evening, exhaustion had caught up with all of us. Samuel looked drained, running on nothing but anxiety and caffeine. Leon could barely keep his eyes open, but when Samuel suggested bedtime, the boy's face crumpled with fresh fear. "I don't want to be alone," Leon whispered, the first full sentence he'd spoken all day. "You don't have to be," I assured him quickly. "How about I stay with you until you fall asleep? Would that help?" He nodded, reaching for my hand with his small one. The gesture tugged at something deep in my chest. "Philip, you don't have to," Samuel began. "It's fine, really." I met his eyes. "Let me do this." The three of us made our way to the guest bedroom. I helped Leon into the pajamas his mother had packed in a hastily thrown-together bag. He climbed into the large bed, looking impossibly small against the adult-sized pillows, his hand still gripping mine tightly. Samuel hovered near the door, clearly wanting to be involved but unsure how. "Would you like to hear a story?" I asked Leon. Another nod. I began spinning a tale from my imagination, a story about a young knight who felt lost and scared in a new kingdom, but who discovered he was braver than he'd ever imagined. I wove in dragons and magic swords, noble horses and enchanted forests. Leon's grip on my hand gradually loosened as his eyelids grew heavy. Within 20 minutes his breathing had evened out into the deep rhythm of sleep. I carefully extracted my hand from his and tucked the blanket around his small form. When I turned to leave, Samuel still stood by the door, watching us with an unreadable expression. We walked silently to the living room. The weight of the day settled over us both. "I couldn't do what you just did." Samuel's voice came out rough with emotion. He won't even look at me without fear in his eyes. I'm his father, and he sees me as a stranger. Maybe worse than a stranger, someone he has to depend on, but doesn't trust. Trust takes time to build. You can't force it. But I don't have time. Samuel sank onto the couch, looking more defeated than I'd ever seen him. "I have a company to run. Board meetings I can't miss. Deals that need my attention. And now I have a son who needs me too. But I don't know the first thing about being a father. I don't know his favorite color or what scares him or how to make him smile." I sat down across from him. "Then you'll learn. One day at a time." He looked up at me, and in his eyes I saw something that made my heartbeat quicken. A raw need for help that went beyond professional assistance. "Philip, I know I have no right to ask this, but I need you to stay. Not just today. Move in here temporarily. Help me with Leon until I can figure out how to be the father he needs. I'll pay you triple your current salary. Whatever you want. Just please don't leave us to fail at this alone." My breath caught. This was so far beyond the boundaries of normal employment that it didn't even exist in the same universe. "Samuel, I can't just—" "Please." He reached across the space between us and caught my hand in his. His touch was warm and desperate, trembling slightly. "I'm terrified of losing him. I just found out I have a son, and now I might destroy any chance of a relationship before it even begins. I need help. I need your help." Every logical reason to refuse ran through my mind. This was inappropriate. This crossed every professional line. This would complicate my life in ways I couldn't predict. But then I thought of Leon's small hand in mine, his whispered request not to be alone, the way he'd finally started to relax and trust just a little. I gently pulled my hand back. "I need to think about it. Let me give you an answer tomorrow." Samuel nodded, understanding even through his disappointment. "Of course. Thank you for today. Really." I gathered my things and left, driving home through city streets that seemed surreal after the emotional intensity of the day. When I finally reached my apartment, sleep refused to come. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, seeing Leon's tear-stained face and Samuel's desperate eyes every time I closed my own. By morning I'd made my decision. Before I could second-guess myself, I drove back to Samuel's building. When he opened the door, surprise and hope flashed across his face. "I'll stay. 3 months. That should give you enough time to find your footing with Leon." Relief washed over his features, followed by something deeper, gratitude mixed with an emotion I couldn't quite name. "Thank you, Philip. You have no idea what this means." But as I stepped back into his apartment, watching the morning light stream through the windows, I had a feeling this decision would change far more than I could imagine. 3 months suddenly seemed both impossibly long and dangerously short. The first week tested every ounce of patience I possessed. Leon woke up screaming from nightmares every single night. His cries would pierce through the quiet apartment at 2, 3, sometimes 4 in the morning. Each time I'd rush to his room to find him tangled in sweat-soaked sheets, calling for his mother with heartbreaking desperation. Samuel would appear seconds later, hovering in the doorway with absolute helplessness written across his face. He didn't know what to do, how to comfort his own son, so I became the one who sat on the edge of Leon's bed, rubbing small circles on his back, humming soft melodies until the trembling stopped and sleep returned. This wasn't in any job description. This was family work, intimate and exhausting. And I wasn't family. I was a temporary solution to a permanent problem. But gradually, impossibly, things began to shift. One morning during the second week, I was in the kitchen preparing breakfast when I heard small footsteps shuffling across the hardwood floor. Leon appeared in the doorway, dragging his teddy bear by one worn paw. Without a word, he climbed onto one of the tall kitchen chairs and simply watched me work. "Good morning, buddy." I kept my tone light and casual, not making a big deal out of this small breakthrough. "Morning." His voice came out as barely more than a whisper, but it was there. "Progress. How about some pancakes today? I could add chocolate chips if you want." A tiny nod, almost invisible, but I caught it. I mixed the batter, deliberately making the process look fun and easy. When I poured the batter onto the griddle, I shaped it into a lopsided dinosaur, complete with a tail and tiny arms. Leon's eyes widened slightly, the first spark of interest I'd seen beyond basic survival mode. "What kind of dinosaur do you think this is?" I asked, flipping it carefully. "T-Rex," he murmured, surprising me with an actual answer. "Good eye. T-Rex pancakes are the fiercest kind." The ghost of a smile flickered across his face for just a second before disappearing. But I'd seen it, and that small victory felt monumental. Samuel emerged from his bedroom dressed in his standard business armor, crisp suit, perfect tie, every hair in place, CEO mode activated. But when he entered the kitchen and saw Leon sitting there, actually engaging, he froze mid-step. "You're really good at this," Samuel said quietly, pouring himself coffee. I shrugged, plating the dinosaur pancake with a few blueberries arranged as a smiley face. "Just practice." "Do you have children of your own?" "No. But I raised my younger siblings when our parents were too busy building their careers. I learned early how to turn a meal into something more than just food." Samuel studied me with newfound curiosity. "I didn't know that about you. In 2 years of working together, I never knew you had siblings or that you'd basically been a parent yourself. You never asked." The words came out without accusation, just simple truth. An awkward silence settled between us, broken only by the sound of Leon's fork scraping against his plate. Then the little boy looked up at his father with those serious eyes. "Do you have to go to work again?" Pain flashed across Samuel's face so quickly I almost missed it. "I do, buddy, but Philip will be here with you all day." "Won't you, Philip?" Leon's eyes swiveled to me, filled with uncertainty and a question he couldn't quite voice. "I promise I'm not going anywhere," I told him firmly. "We'll have fun today. Maybe we can go to the park if the weather's nice." That seemed to satisfy him. He returned his attention to the dinosaur pancake, carefully eating around the edges first. Samuel grabbed his briefcase but paused at the door. "Philip, seriously. Thank you. I don't know how to do what you're doing, but I'm grateful you're here." After he left, the apartment felt larger somehow. Leon and I spent the day exploring the nearby park, where he cautiously tried the swings and seemed fascinated by the ducks in the pond. We got ice cream from a vendor and I learned that he preferred vanilla with rainbow sprinkles. Small details, but each one felt like a piece of a puzzle slowly coming together. By the time Samuel returned that evening, Leon was significantly more relaxed. I'd cooked a simple dinner, spaghetti with meat sauce, and set the table for 3. "You cooked?" Samuel looked genuinely surprised. "Figured we should eat something besides takeout." "Sit down." Dinner became our first real meal together as this strange makeshift household. Leon talked more than he had all week combined, telling Samuel about the ducks and the swings and how he'd gotten ice cream but hadn't made a mess. Samuel listened intently, asking follow-up questions, clearly desperate to connect with his son in any meaningful way. After Leon went to bed, Samuel and I found ourselves alone in the living room once again. He poured 2 glasses of wine without asking, handing me one. He seemed happy today. Actually happy, not just less sad. Samuel's voice carried a note of wonder. "He's adjusting. It takes time, but he's getting there. I wish I could do what comes so naturally to you. Make him feel safe. Know what he needs before he asks. You can. You just need to give yourself permission to not be perfect at it right away." Samuel took a long sip of wine, and when he looked at me again, his gaze held weight. "In the office I always saw you as incredibly competent, efficient and professional, someone who made my chaotic schedule manageable. But here, in my home, I'm seeing someone completely different. Someone real and warm who doesn't hide behind professional walls." My heartbeat picked up unexpectedly. "I'm the same person in both places." "No." He set down his glass and moved slightly closer. "At work you keep everyone at arm's length. You never talk about yourself or your past. But here, you let Leon see who you really are. And I'm seeing it too." The air between us grew heavy with something unspoken. I stood abruptly, suddenly needing distance. "I should get some rest. Leon usually wakes up early." "Philip, wait." I stopped but didn't turn around. "Stay. Just for a few more minutes. Please." Something in his voice made me turn back. Samuel looked lonely sitting there, and I realized with a start that I felt lonely too. Despite being surrounded by people all day, both of us were isolated in our own ways. I sat back down, maintaining careful space between us. We didn't talk much after that. The silence wrapped around us, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It felt like 2 people simply existing in the same space without the need to fill every moment with words. Over the following days, I noticed Samuel making more effort. He started coming home earlier, even if just by 30 minutes. He'd attempt to cook breakfast on weekends, though the results were often questionable. He read bedtime stories to Leon, stumbling over the words but trying his hardest. Leon responded to these efforts. He'd wait by the window for Samuel to come home. He'd show his father drawings from daycare. The wall between them was crumbling, piece by piece. And me? I was becoming dangerously comfortable in this role. This wasn't supposed to be my life, playing house with my former boss and his traumatized son. But somehow it was starting to feel less like an obligation and more like something I didn't want to end. That realization scared me more than I wanted to admit, because in less than 3 months, I was supposed to walk away from all of this. And with each passing day, that deadline felt more like an approaching cliff edge than a planned exit. Week 3 arrived with deceptive calmness. Everything had fallen into a rhythm that felt almost too perfect to be real. Leon started attending a nearby elementary school, settling into kindergarten with surprising ease. Samuel had begun leaving the office earlier, sometimes arriving home before dinner. And me? I'd stopped counting down the days until my 3-month agreement ended. That realization should have alarmed me, but instead it just felt inevitable. One evening, I was curled up on the living room couch with a novel when the front door opened well past midnight. I glanced at the clock. 12:47 a.m. My stomach tightened with concern. Samuel stumbled through the doorway, and I barely recognized him. His tie hung loose and askew around his neck. His shirt had wrinkles I'd never seen on his normally immaculate clothing. But what stopped me cold was his expression. Something fundamental had shattered behind his eyes. "Samuel? What happened?" He didn't answer. Instead, he walked straight to the bar cart in the corner, grabbing a crystal tumbler and the bottle of expensive whiskey he kept for rare occasions. He poured a generous measure and downed it in one burning gulp, then another, then a third. I set my book aside and moved toward him. "That's enough." My hand closed over his wrist as he reached for a 4th pour. He froze, finally looking directly at me. The anguish in his gaze hit me like a physical blow, stealing the breath from my lungs. I lost the deal. Which one? The merger I've been negotiating for 6 months. The biggest acquisition in company history. They withdrew this afternoon. He set the glass down with a hollow thunk. The board members said I'm distracted, that I'm not the Samuel Reed they hired. And they're absolutely right. That's not. I'm failing, Philip. At work, I can't concentrate during meetings. I miss critical details. The board is questioning my judgment. His voice dropped to something raw and broken. And at home, I'm still barely more than a stranger to my own son. That's not true. Leon adores you. The words erupted from somewhere deep and wounded. When you're here, he lights up. He feels safe. He laughs. But me? I'm just the guy who pays the bills and leaves for work every morning. I provide nothing he actually needs. You're his father. That means everything. Does it? He finally pulled his wrist free and buried his face in both hands. Being a father is more than shared genetics. It's knowing what makes your child smile, what frightens them at night, how to comfort them when they're hurt. I don't know any of that. I don't know how to be what he deserves. Without thinking, I stepped closer and placed my hands on his shoulders. Love isn't something you can force or rush. It builds slowly, one day at a time. But time is exactly what I don't have. When he lifted his face, I saw tears tracking down his cheeks. Real tears from a man who never showed weakness. The board is pressuring me to send Leon to boarding school. They want me focused solely on saving the company. And sometimes late at night, I wonder if they're right. Maybe Leon would be better off somewhere else, with people who actually know how to raise children. Don't you dare say that. My voice came out sharper than intended. Leon needs you. You need him. You just need more patience with yourself. I can't do this without you. His voice broke completely. Philip, please don't leave when the 3 months are up. I know it's selfish to ask. I know you have your own life. But we need you. I need you. My heart began racing. Samuel, you're upset and exhausted. We shouldn't discuss this now. He reached up and cupped my face with both hands, his palms warm against my skin. I need you. The air vanished from the room. His touch, his proximity, the desperate vulnerability in his red-rimmed eyes. It was overwhelming. This wasn't my boss speaking. This was Samuel, stripped of every defense, offering me something I hadn't known I wanted until this exact moment. I gently removed his hands from my face, stepping backward. You've been drinking. You need sleep, not big conversations. I'm not drunk, Samuel. I've been alone for so long. Philip. The whisper cut deeper than any shout. Years of isolation, building walls, never letting anyone close. Then you walked into my home and changed everything. You saw Leon. You made this cold apartment into somewhere warm. And somehow you changed me too. I couldn't respond, because the terrifying truth was that he'd changed me as well in ways I was still struggling to understand. I should get some rest, I managed finally, turning toward my room. But sleep never came. His words echoed through my mind on an endless loop, mixing with the memory of his hands on my face, the vulnerability in his voice, the tears he'd never shown anyone else. When dawn finally broke, I dragged myself to the kitchen, planning to make coffee and try to shake off the emotional hangover. But Samuel was already there, surrounded by cooking chaos. Smoke billowed from the stove, where pancakes had burned to unrecognizable black discs. Batter splattered across the counter. He looked utterly defeated. What are you doing? He turned toward me with guilt written across his features. Last night, I made you uncomfortable. I crossed lines I shouldn't have. So I thought I'd make breakfast as an apology. Clearly, I'm terrible at that too. I looked at this powerful CEO, a man who commanded boardrooms and closed million-dollar deals, completely helpless in front of a pancake griddle. Something cracked open inside my chest. Move over. Let me handle this. We stood side by side, working in companionable silence. I mixed fresh batter while he cleaned up the disaster zone. Our shoulders brushed occasionally, and neither of us pulled away. Leon appeared in the doorway moments later, rubbing sleep from his eyes. When he saw both of us cooking together, his whole face brightened. Is Daddy helping make breakfast? Samuel glanced at me, uncertainty flickering across his expression. I nodded encouragement. Yes, I'm helping. Or trying to, anyway. That's so cool. Leon climbed into his chair, watching us with pure delight. After that morning, something fundamental shifted in our household dynamic. Samuel stopped treating fatherhood like a business problem to solve, and started simply being present. He rescheduled important meetings to make it home for dinner. He read bedtime stories every night even when exhaustion made his voice crack. He asked Leon questions about school and actually listened to the rambling answers. Leon responded to these efforts with gradually increasing trust. He started waiting by the window for Samuel's return each evening. He'd voluntarily show his father artwork from school. The painful distance between them was finally slowly closing, and I stood in the middle watching them build a real relationship, feeling both proud and terrified, because my job here was nearly complete. In less than 2 months, I was supposed to walk away from all of this. From Leon's laughter, from Samuel's rare smiles, from this fragile family we'd somehow constructed. The thought of leaving grew heavier each day, like a weight pressing against my chest that I couldn't quite shake. This was never meant to be permanent. I'd agreed to 3 months, nothing more. So why did the idea of my deadline arriving feel less like freedom and more like losing everything that mattered? Month 2 brought an unexpected challenge. Leon's 6th birthday. It would be his first celebration with Samuel, and my boss had transformed into an anxious mess over party planning. I found him one evening surrounded by parenting magazines and Pinterest printouts, looking genuinely panicked. How do I make this special? What kind of party do 6-year-olds even want? What if I get it wrong and ruin his birthday? I couldn't help laughing. You negotiate billion-dollar mergers, but a child's birthday party defeats you. Business makes sense. This? He gestured helplessly at the scattered papers. This is completely outside my expertise. Then let's keep it simple. Small gathering here at home. Ask Leon what theme he wants and we'll build around that. We sat down with Leon that evening and his eyes went wide with excitement when we asked about his birthday wishes. After serious consideration, he announced he wanted a superhero party, specifically Batman-themed, with just a few friends from school. Samuel and I spent the next week transforming the apartment. We hung black and yellow streamers, bought Batman decorations, and ordered a custom cake featuring the bat signal. Samuel threw himself into the preparations with unexpected enthusiasm, and I realized he was desperate to prove himself as a father through this one perfect day. The party arrived sunny and warm. Leon's classmates filled the living room with excited chatter and boundless energy. Their parents lingered, making small talk and keeping watchful eyes on the chaos. Samuel struggled initially with the social aspects. Small talk had never been his strength, especially with strangers, but I stayed close, subtly guiding conversations and helping him relax. Gradually, his stiff posture eased. He started genuinely engaging with the other parents, even sharing a few stories about Leon's adjustment to his new home. Watching him make these efforts, seeing him smile naturally and show real interest in building community connections for Leon's sake, it revealed a side of Samuel I'd never witnessed. This wasn't CEO mode or professional armor. This was authentic. When time came for cake, we gathered everyone around. Leon stood before the Batman cake, candles flickering, while we all sang. He closed his eyes tight, made his silent wish, and blew with all his might. The candles extinguished. Everyone applauded. Then Leon turned and threw his arms around Samuel in a fierce, spontaneous hug. "Thank you, Daddy. This is the best birthday ever." Tears welled in Samuel's eyes as he held his son close. When his gaze found mine over Leon's shoulder, the gratitude there mixed with something deeper, something that made my pulse quicken unexpectedly. After the guests departed and Leon finally crashed from his sugar high, Samuel and I tackled the cleanup, deflating balloons, collecting discarded wrapping paper, wiping frosting from various surfaces. "Today went well," Samuel said, gathering streamers. Leon seemed genuinely happy. "He was? You did an amazing job making him feel celebrated." "Only because you guided me through every step." "No, you made the real effort. You showed up for him completely. That's what mattered." Samuel stopped working and turned to face me fully. "Philip, these past 2 months have been the best of my entire life. My heartbeat accelerated without permission. Watching Leon open up and start trusting again. That's all because of you. But it's more than that. You moved closer, closing the distance between us. I'm falling in love with you. Don't say that. Why not? It's the truth. Because this isn't real. I'm your employee. Temporary help. In 1 month I'll be gone. This whole arrangement has an expiration date. What if it doesn't have to? Samuel caught my hand in his. Every morning I wake up hoping you'll still be here. Your laugh brightens my entire day. Watching you with Leon shows me what family actually means. None of that feels temporary to me. Samuel. I'm in love with you, Philip. Completely and terrifyingly in love. The world tilted sideways. Those words hung in the air between us, impossible to take back or ignore. Please don't say things you'll regret. I won't regret speaking the truth. What I'd regret is letting you leave without telling you how I feel. In 1 month, I'm supposed to walk out that door. We agree? Then don't. He reached up and cradled my face in both hands, his touch achingly gentle. Stay. Not as hired help. Stay as someone who belongs here with us. With me. Every logical argument I'd constructed began crumbling. Because buried beneath all my careful defenses was the terrifying realization that I'd fallen to. Somewhere between bedtime stories and family dinners, between crisis management and quiet conversations, I'd fallen completely. I'm scared, I whispered. So am I. For the first time in years, I'm feeling something real and powerful. It's absolutely terrifying, but losing you scares me infinitely more. His thumb brushed across my cheekbone with heartbreaking tenderness. Then he leaned in and kissed me. The kiss started soft and questioning, giving me space to pull away, but I didn't. Instead, I melted into it, finally acknowledging feelings I'd been suppressing for weeks. His lips moved against mine with desperate hope, and I responded with equal intensity, pouring months of unspoken emotion into this single moment. When we finally broke apart, both breathless, reality crashed back. Stay, Samuel repeated. Please. Before I could answer, a small voice drifted down from upstairs. Philip? I had a scary dream. We jumped apart guiltily. Leon stood on the staircase in his Batman pajamas, looking sleepy and vulnerable. I'll go, I said quickly, needing the escape. Samuel nodded, understanding written in his expression. We'll talk tomorrow. I guided Leon back to his room, settled him under the covers, and told him a quick story about brave superheroes who conquered their fears. He gripped my hand trustingly until sleep claimed him. But I couldn't sleep. That kiss had demolished every careful boundary I'd maintained. It made everything real in a way I couldn't ignore or rationalize away. The next morning arrived wrapped in awkwardness. Samuel and I danced around each other, making breakfast in charged silence, while Leon remained oblivious. After dropping Leon at school, we returned to an empty apartment that suddenly felt too small. About last night, Samuel began carefully. I need time to think, to figure out what I want. How much time? 1 week? Just give me 1 week. He nodded, though pain flickered across his features. He understood what I couldn't quite articulate. This decision would reshape all our futures, and getting it wrong would hurt everyone involved. That week passed in strange limbo. We maintained normal routines for Leon's sake, but tension hummed constantly beneath the surface. Unspoken words, suppressed feelings, questions with no easy answers. And every night I lay awake wondering, could I actually stay, build a real life here with them, or was I setting myself up for inevitable heartbreak when reality proved less perfect than this temporary dream? The deadline I'd requested approached with terrifying speed, and I still had no answer. The final week of my 3rd month arrived like an executioner's deadline. I'd been avoiding meaningful conversations with Samuel since the kiss, retreating behind professional politeness whenever he tried to discuss our situation. We functioned like cordial roommates rather than whatever we'd been becoming, and the distance hurt more than I'd anticipated. Leon noticed the change immediately. Children always do. Philip, did you and Daddy have a fight? He asked one afternoon while we colored together. No, buddy. Why would you think that? You don't smile at each other anymore. Daddy looks sad all the time now, like he did before you came here. His observation pierced straight through my heart. Everything's fine, I promise. But that was a lie, and we both knew it. Nothing was fine. I was scheduled to leave in 7 days, and the thought felt like slowly drowning. Stay and risk this fragile happiness shattering? Or leave and preserve myself but abandon the people I'd somehow come to love? Both options felt equally impossible. On my final Tuesday evening, Samuel knocked on my bedroom door near midnight. I'd been packing slowly, mechanically folding clothes I'd accumulated during my stay. "Can we talk?" I opened the door. He looked nervous in a way I'd never witnessed, not even during Leon's worst meltdowns or his own professional crisis. "Your time here ends this week." "I know, and you're planning to leave?" I remained silent, which was answer enough. "Philip, please. I need to understand. After everything we've shared, after what happened between us, did I misread everything? Did I imagine the connection?" "You didn't misread anything." I sighed deeply, suddenly exhausted by all the pretending. "That's exactly the problem. I don't understand. All of this, you, Leon, this life. It feels too perfect, like a beautiful dream that can't possibly survive real life. Why can't it be real?" "Because perfect things break." The words burst out harsher than intended. "Your world is completely different from mine. You're a CEO worth millions, with power and influence. I'm just someone who happened to be in the right place at the right moment. What happens when you realize you need someone better suited to your life?" Samuel moved closer, catching my hands in his. "Do you actually believe that? That you're somehow inferior or replaceable?" "I don't know what I believe anymore." "Then let me tell you what I know." His voice carried absolute conviction. "You gave me my life back. Before you, I was functioning but not living, just going through motions. You connected me with my son when I'd nearly given up hope. You showed me what home actually means beyond just expensive furniture and a prestigious address. Without you, I'll go back to being that hollow person who existed rather than lived." Tears pricked my eyes. "But what if I'm not enough? What if one day you wake up and regret this?" "There is no one better, Philip. You're not some temporary solution or convenient arrangement. You're essential." He squeezed my hands gently. "I'm terrified, too. Falling in love for the first time in years is absolutely frightening. But losing you terrifies me infinitely more. I've been so scared," I admitted finally, the confession pouring out. "Scared that this feeling isn't mutual. Scared that I'm projecting family fantasies onto a professional situation. Scared of staying and getting hurt. Scared of leaving and regretting it forever." "Then stay and let's be scared together." He pulled me closer until I could feel his heartbeat. "Not because of obligation or employment. Stay because you want this too. Because somewhere in these chaotic months, he fell just like I did." "I did fall," I whispered, "so completely that it terrifies me." "Then forget the fear. Just stay." He kissed me again, and this time I didn't hold back. This kiss was different from our first, less desperate, more certain. A promise rather than a question. When we finally separated, I found myself laughing shakily. "Leon is going to have opinions about this." Samuel smiled, genuinely smiled in that rare way that transformed his entire face. "He already asked me when I'm planning to marry you." "What?" 2 days ago, completely seriously. "He said if I don't marry you soon, he'll do it himself when he grows up." That startled a real laugh out of me. He's quite the strategist. Takes after his father. And apparently shares his overconfidence. Also from his father. We both laughed, and suddenly all the tension and fear dissolved. This was real. Messy and complicated and absolutely real. The next morning I officially withdrew my resignation letter from the company. But I wasn't returning as Samuel's assistant. That professional relationship had transformed into something entirely different. Partnership, family, home. When Leon came home from school that afternoon, I was waiting with Samuel beside me. Leon looked between us cautiously, sensing something significant about to happen. "I'm not leaving," I told him simply. His face lit up like fireworks. "Really? You promise you're staying forever?" "Forever," I confirmed. Leon launched himself at me with such force we nearly toppled over. His small arms wrapped around my neck in a stranglehold hug while happy tears dampened my shirt. "This is the best thing ever. Now we're a real family." Samuel joined the embrace, his arms encircling both of us. For a long moment, we just held each other, this impossible family that shouldn't work but somehow absolutely did. "Are we really a family now?" Leon asked, his voice muffled against my shoulder. I looked at Samuel over Leon's head. He looked back at me with such open love and hope that my last remaining doubts evaporated completely. Yes, I answered. We're really a family. And standing there in that moment, wrapped in their arms with afternoon sunlight streaming through the windows, I realized the truth. I'd come here 3 months ago planning to resign and start fresh somewhere else. Instead, I'd found where I actually belonged. This wasn't the ending I'd planned. It was infinitely better, a beginning. The start of something real and lasting, built on trust and love and choosing each other every single day. I'd been so focused on leaving that I'd nearly missed the most important thing. Sometimes the life you're meant to live isn't the one you plan. Sometimes it finds you in the most unexpected places, in a desperate CEO's penthouse, in a frightened child's tears, in small moments of connection that build into something magnificent. I was home. Finally truly home. And I was never leaving again.